What's up, everybody? My name is Dan Kornhauser.
And I'm Sam Teets.
And thank you guys for joining us tonight. Yet another Monday, and it is Championship Monday. Here we are. This is for all the marbles. This is what every team plays for. This is what we've been waiting for. It's a marquee matchup, Alabama, Georgia. Can Georgia stop Alabama's dynasty? Can they stop Nick Saban from doing it again? Back-to-backs, like a goat, like the goat that he is, doing goaty shit, legend. Can they stop it? It's a buzzsaw. Can Kirby Smart do it? Can that Georgia defense step up, unlike the last game, the conference championship? I'm excited. Are you excited, Sam?
I am very excited. I just hope that this game is better than the two semifinal games. I just want one close, dramatic game this college football playoff.
Is this going to be it? Is this the one?
I think it's going to be better than the past two. I mean, it's not a high bar to set to get over those the semifinals, but I expect it to be closer than the SEC championship game, in large part because Kirby Smart knows he has to make significant adjustments. And Kirby Smart is not in the same league as Nick Saban, but I don't know that the Crimson Tide could have played a much better game plan than what they had in the SEC championship game. Mm-hmm. So from that perspective, Georgia has a lot more area to grow than Alabama, so I expect it to be a closer game than at least the SEC championship, and hopefully it'll come down to the final 6 or 7 minutes or so, at least that much.
Go on. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I just hope it's going to be close towards the end. I do think, like I said, Georgia has more room to improve than Alabama, which is why I expect it to be closer than what we had in the SEC championship game.
Now of all these NFL prospects, this is a great game, great coaching matchup. As you mentioned, Kirby Smart has always struggled against Saban. Is that because Saban taught Kirby Smart everything he knows? They come from that, the Bill Belichick thing, all these coaches under Bill Belichick. They learn from the GOAT. They learn how to practice. They learn how to talk to guys. They learn his schemes and the way he thinks and stuff like that. So then they leave and they all suck. No one who's left Belichick has been as successful as Bill or even close to it. Is that sort of like what's going on here with Kirby Smart?
Well, anytime you leave the greatest head coach of all time to kind of start out on your own, you're going to look small in comparison, which is just how it's been for most of these guys. I mean, that's understandably so. I think the issue, and Nick Saban's not been as consistent personality-wise as people would make you think. He's gotten more mellow over the years. He certainly was more fiery at different points in his career. So I don't know if it's necessarily just the personality type. I don't know if it's the approach to the game, but Nick Saban has the momentum. He's got a decade plus of momentum. And that just carries him into having these amazing recruiting classes. But also, he sees the game differently. And that's sometimes just something you can't teach. If you are a special person, a special individual, on the same level as a Bill Belichick, a Tom Brady, or a Michael Jordan, someone on that level that is just better than everyone else for some reason, you just can't teach that. There's an innate level to that where it's just who you are. And you cannot necessarily transfer that via osmosis to someone else just by being around them. It doesn't happen that way. So I think part of it is just who Nick Saban is. Kirby Smart can be as great as he wants to be, but ultimately he's going to end up being short of Nick Saban. And that's probably a big difference in this game. The quarterback play is one thing, but the head coaching is going to be something else entirely.
So you give Alabama the edge on the coaching front, at least on the offensive side. It's easy to say Alabama has the advantage at quarterback. I think it's fair to say they have the advantage at wide receiver. Do they have the advantage compared to the Georgia O-line or compared to the Georgia D-line? Do they have the advantage there?
I think, if we're talking about offensive lines in general, it's a little bit of a wash to me. We'll get into the top prospects later when we're talking about some of the guys up front. The Alabama line is probably a little bit more talented than the Georgia offensive line, but it's much closer than any of the other player groups we've talked about so far. Like, that's, to me, is the biggest. You want to wash out one positional battle there, probably that one. The defensive line for Georgia, in my opinion, is more talented than the offensive line for Alabama, but there's ways to scheme your offense to stopping them. They're not unstoppable. They're not maybe the historic force we hyped them up to be originally at the beginning of the year. They're not that group because you can plan around them.
Now, so you said the offensive line versus that defensive line. That's your top matchup for this game. That's the most important thing you're looking at.
Yeah, I believe so. Because if you cannot pressure Bryce Young, you cannot win this game. I mean, so we saw what Cincinnati did last week. When Cincinnati and Monte Sanders were able to pressure Bryce Young, he did not perform that well.
Mm-hmm.
He was not the Heisman Trophy winner last week. And I understand that the offensive scheme was much different. There was a lot of shorter passes. But still, Bryce Young looked very uncomfortable for most of that game against Cincinnati. If you cannot make Bryce Young uncomfortable and make him move around in the pocket, there's just nothing you can do to win this game.
Before we move forward, I do want to remind everyone that we are powered by Betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet for sportsbook and casino sites. Head on over to Betting.net. So let's do this. I can't stop thinking about it. I just want to do it. I'm so excited. Everybody loves rankings. Everybody loves seeing a 1 through 10 or whatever. I love charts. I love rankings. I'm so ready. So let's just do it. Let's get this going. What is your top 10 prospects that you will be watching this game? But before you start going, we do have a couple of comments I want to throw out there before we jump into it. This one from Joseph Michael. Alabama has the best defensive front in college football. And there was some typos there, but he made another comment and he corrected all the typos. But we got what you were saying, Joe. No worries. And you know what? You're not too far off, man. They've got the best player in the country, so that's best defensive player in the country. So that's a good place to start in Will Anderson. But before you give us your top 10, when you're watching a game like this, I know you're going to watch it more than once. I will too. That's what we got to do when it comes to stuff like this, because there's not just one or two guys on either side of the ball that you got to watch. It's literally like 30 or 40 players that you're going to have to try to watch as things go on. You're going to be looking at the linemen. You're going to be looking at Neal at left tackle, see how he's responding to Walker and the other edge rushers that Georgia has. You're going to look at how Robinson reads the blocks and if he hits the right holes and how his burst looks. You're going to look at all these different things for all these different positions. So we're going to be watching this game a few times so we can really catch all the nuances for some of these different players on either team. But what are some things that you try to focus on when you're watching a game like this for the first time with an eye towards like scouting and watching these players?
That is a little bit determined by who's playing in the game, like what players, what position groups are talented, that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit different for every game. This one in particular, I want to see how Jamison Williams and the Georgia corners match up. We saw last week against Cincinnati, Alabama had basically just a short offensive game plan. They had only one, I think, effective deep pass the entire game against Cincinnati. I want to see if Georgia can somewhat emulate that by keeping Jamison Williams bottled up instead of allowing him to torch them like he did in the SEC championship game. So for me, I might be spending a little extra time watching the outside options this time around instead of focusing on the trenches. Even though all the star power is in the trenches, I think there's a lot to be worried about and a lot to watch in terms of the wide receiver cornerback battles.
All right, yo. So let's do it. Now it's time. It's 7:17. I figure by the time we're done with this part of the segment, we'll call it a wrap because it's game night. So I want to be ready and in front of that TV with my beer and my wings ready to go. So let's do it, man. Give me your top 10 NFL draft prospects for this year's draft in this game. Rank them. Let's do it.
And before I say that, I want to say this game is just insane talent-wise for the draft. In my top 300 big board I had, 27 players ranked in the top 300 that are on these rosters. Now, not every one of them's playing in this game. There are some guys who are injured, not able to play. Mm-hmm. Obviously, John Mechie, someone like Tyke Smith for Georgia at safety. Not everyone's playing. But 27 guys ranked and 2 guys were honorable mentions. 29 NFL players in this game who are eligible for this coming draft. It's insane. But if you want to get into the top 10 right away, number 1 is Evan Neal. And I think that's not a stretch right now. It's getting closer, though, I believe. Evan Neal's kind of sliding back a little bit and some of the guys who have good seasons are getting closer. Number 1, Evan Neal. Number 2, this might surprise people, Kobe Dean. And this is kind of a pick your flavor kind of linebacker, but for modern NFL defenses where you got to play in space, you got to cover well, you got to be able to blitz, Kobe Dean can do all of that. Is he going to stack a 330-pound interior offensive lineman running up end? Probably not. It's probably not going to go that well. But you know what? He does everything else so well. I'm willing to take the bet. Number 3, Jordan Davis. Probably a little bit lower. Actually, no, number 3 is not Jordan Davis. My bad. Number 3 is Jameson Williams by one spot. He's 15 on my big board. Jordan Davis is 16. Those are my top 4. All of them, in my opinion, are blue chip caliber players. Number 5 is Jordan Battle, the safety, who I've come to like more and more this year. I had some reservations on him early in the season. I've gotten more into him as the year's gone on. Number 5, Travon Walker, edge for Georgia, someone who I could sneak up into the first round potentially. After that, it's Devontae Wyatt, an interior defensive line for Georgia. We don't have many great interior defensive linemen this year. There's some guys like Jordan Davis, obviously, but not many true defensive tackles are going to be great this season. I think Devontae Wyatt's going to be one of the higher-ranked ones going into this draft. Let's see, that's 7 down. Okay, one next guy up I'm going to say is Lewis Cine for Georgia at safety, who's been one of the biggest risers this year. They've had some great safety play despite losing someone like Tyke Smith, who's supposed to be a huge transfer for them from West Virginia. He's the guy who I view as being not a first-round pick, but probably going to be a low second to high third-round pick. That takes us through, 8 through 2 more. I'm losing track of numbers here. I'm not a math guy. Next up, I have someone like John Mechie on the board, but John Mechie obviously not playing tonight, so we won't count him for this round. Mm-hmm. Darion Kendrick, who's going to have a huge deal. This is a guy I really want to watch, a zone kind of corner in the NFL, who's going to have to deal with the speed potentially of John Mechie. That's someone I really want to see. And I think that leaves us with one more, which would be Christian Harris, the linebacker from Alabama, who is struggling coverage at times this year, but has the athleticism to play in space and maybe develop that part of his game at the next level. One more player I'll mention because he's just 2 spots behind Christian Harris on my big board. Mm-hmm. Fidarian Mathis, I believe is how you pronounce his first name, the interior defensive lineman for Alabama. He's going to be higher on my next big board significantly, probably going to be in the 50s. I think he's really good.
What stood out to you about him now than earlier?
A little bit is getting the comparison. I think he's been super consistent down the stretch. And obviously this has been a breakout season for him. He was never this dominant at any point during his first couple of years at Alabama. But going back and watching him, going back to get a chance to really see the interior defensive guy, because I focused a lot on the edge rushers. I'm not going to lie. I like the sacks. Sacks are sexy. It's kind of cool to watch those guys a lot early in the year. And I was really captivated by the edge rushers, safeties, and corners early on. I didn't think this was a great defensive tackle class, but Mathis has really stood out to me as a player who could be a game changer and could be potentially the second most impactful player along this defense for Alabama tonight, besides Will Anderson Jr., obviously.
All right, so there we go. So my top 10 is going to have a few players that are pretty similar to yours. I am going to have Evan Neal as my number 1. Obvious reasons that you gave, possible top pick, top tackle in the draft, likely top 5, maybe even top 3 pick. I also have Nakobe Dean as my number 2. And as you said, it will come down to what's the team who's picking's flavor. How do they feel about a smaller linebacker like this? He's listed at 6 foot 225. Is he going to be, 6 foot 215 or something like that? Because we know colleges like to kind of boost these guys' stats. They might put him
5. It's going to be 5'10", 215. Yeah. You never know.
Yeah, it's one of those. Yo, it's a thing. I know it happened with Jock last year. I think they had him listed at like 6'1" or something like that. I think he's like 5'11" or something. 6.
Who was the receiver drafted by Baltimore in the first round? I can't remember his name now, from Minnesota.
Rashad Bateman.
Rashad Bateman got smaller every time they weighed him, and like every time they took his height measurements, he went from being like 6'3" to like 6'2" to 6'1", from like 220, 215, 205. Every time he got smaller. It was so funny to watch the measurements change.
Yeah, I mean, that'll happen. That's a real thing. I don't know if it's just to boost them up in the programs, be like, oh, look at this guy, he's 6'3", 220, prototype, and then he gets to the combine and 6 foot 205. It's kind of weird, but regardless of his size, Nakobe Dean is real. He's right, and he should plug right in as a starter in the right system. I have Jameson Williams as my number 3 prospect in this game. elite wide receiver, short yardage king, can take it the distance, big play threat. I actually have Jordan Battle as my number 4 prospect here, the safety from Alabama. He's a guy who profiles for me as a potential starter at safety. He's heady, he can make plays, and he's a likely second-round pick for me at this point. I do have Jordan Davis 5th, the massive defensive tackle from Georgia. Primarily, as we've discussed in previous shows, it's mostly because he's a 2-down guy. He's got the physical ability, he's got the talent, the strength, and the quickness at times. But as you mentioned last week, he appeared gassed at times against Georgia, and against Alabama in the SEC championship, and he just is one of those guys. He might just be pigeonholed as a 2-down guy, so that affects his ranking on this list. But he has that potential, and he's a likely first-round pick as well for me. Trayvon Walker is my number 6 guy. The Georgia defensive lineman. I like Trayvon Walker, Trayvon, whatever. I like Walker a lot. He's a versatile guy. He can play in standing up in a 3-4 front. He can play with his hand in the ground in a 4-3 front. And I was doing my mock draft recently, and I really wanted to put this guy in New England in my mock draft because partially they like to go to players from big schools and big SEC schools or big schools like Ohio State, Florida, whatever schools kind of have any connection to Bill Belichick. He kind of gives a little extra love to him, the Alabamas and whatnot. And Georgia's up there too, at least in terms of prestige for a college program. And Walker's a good prospect. He's a potential late first-round pick, mid-first-round pick if things work out at the combine. I got John Mechie on that list as well. So where are we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Number 7 is Mechie. Yes, the injury is a concern, but he's a burner. He is a stud when healthy. Tons of potential. The injury, like I said, is a concern, but take him in the 2nd, 3rd round, latest kind of a thing. Let him get better, and he'll be fine. I think he'll be a good weapon in the pros. Devonta Wyatt is next on my list, the defensive lineman out of Georgia, 6'3", 300, give or take. Everything you said, that's why he's on the list. Darian Kendrick, the corner from Georgia, is next. And he's one of those guys, like you said, I want to see how he does against these receivers. They might be able to bottle up Jamison Williams by giving him a lot of attention, but it's going to be up to these other receivers for Alabama to step up. I'm going to be curious to see if Kendrick's going to spend most of the night following Williams around. Is he going to be just on one side of the field? See how that works out. So that'll be a fun thing to look for. So that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And finally, number 10. I had a few guys here that I was considering. I was considering Lewis Sine or Cena, whatever, the safety from Georgia. I was thinking about Fedarian Mathis, the lineman from Alabama, like you mentioned, because he had a great year. But I'm going to go with George Pickens in this one. I think George Pickens is a receiver who could go in the 2nd round. He's not a complete receiver. I don't see him as a big game breaker or anything like that, but he had some good games for Georgia. He was their top guy this year on the outside, and I think there's definitely a future for him in the NFL. Just missed for me, though, was Henry To'o, the linebacker. I hope I'm saying that right. Linebacker from Alabama. He's another one who had a great year. He stood out to me a lot. Also, Josh Joby, the corner for Alabama. Brian Robinson, their running back. I mean, we could go on and on and on. Jamar Salyer played against some premier defensive linemen this year. And if I remember correctly, looking at the stat, the man only gave up like 1 sack to a group of elite rushers. Among them was Aiden Hutchinson, I believe.
From last.
Yep, and Will Anderson and stuff like that, holding these studs to total of, I think, like 1 sack on the year. Crazy. Big guy, mid-round guy, maybe 3rd rounder or something like that right now, but he could definitely move up. He's got some good size to him, inside-outside guy. So are there any final thoughts you want to say on prospects-wise before we make our final predictions?
I just wish all these guys were healthy. You had Mechie. Josh Jobe, unfortunately, had season-ending surgery, so he's not going to play. But you have Mechie, who's not going to be out there. Tyke Smith, I already mentioned, for Georgia, probably not going to play. George Pickens has been battling an injury all year long to try to get back out there and play at 100%. I just wish we could see all these teams healthy because, frankly, if they were, you're looking at like almost 30 NFL players. It's just insane, the fact that these teams are so talented this year. And there's not even another team. Like Michigan has a lot of guys, yes, but there's not even another team this year not even Ohio State, in my opinion, has nearly as many guys as these two programs this season.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, I'm just going down my list right now of my prospects and whatnot, and the only ones that really have been coming close are maybe Oklahoma, maybe not Clemson a little bit. But no, dude, you're right. I mean, and it makes sense when we're talking about the two teams that are in this game. Alabama has the top class every damn year, it seems like. So or top 3 or top 5 for sure every single year with a ton of 5-star prospects. So it's not a surprise, and Georgia's not too far behind either. So with that in mind, my friend, it's time. We got our top 10s down, and before we go forward with our predictions, Joseph Michael has another comment. Best offensive tackle this year, hands down. Good pick. I would assume he's talking about Neal. Yep. So thank you, Joseph, for your comments, and keep them coming. Don't be shy. Don't be scared, folks. I do want to remind everyone that we are powered by Betting.net, and Betting.net is your top sportsbook comparison site. Betting.net offers extensive reviews on the best sports books out there. So head on over to Betting.net. Now, here we go. I know our last show we made some predictions, but I want to check and make sure where you stand. All right? The line is still Georgia -3. Are you still taking Bama?
I am absolutely still taking Bama. And it's just, I'm at a point where, like, Tom Brady and Bama and these kind of situations, just there's no reason to bet against them. Because if I bet against them, more often than not, I'm wrong. So just playing the odds, forget the individual matchups, just play the odds and say, more often than not, I'm wrong if I bet against them. Just stay with them. So I'm going to stick with Alabama, and I'm going to pick them to win. I made the mistake of betting against Tom Brady last year in the Super Bowl. That didn't work out for me. I'm not betting against Nick Saban in the national championship game. It will go poorly for me.
All right. Now, here's a question. I don't know if you're a betting man or not, but if you were, you'd bet on Alabama? You're that confident? You would put money down on these guys?
I would put money for them to win and for them to cover, like just to win outright. I think they're going to win this game. And what will the final spread be? I have no idea. I have no idea how much. I mean, that's something I think we'll know by midway through the first quarter. We'll have an idea of how this game's going to go. But we know Bama has a situation where sometimes they will play you close for the first half and then just blow you out in the second half or something like that. I think that could be a situation where we hit the fourth quarter and Alabama just pulls away, and by the end of it, they're looking back on like a 10 or 12-point lead.
Well, we're less than 30 minutes away from kickoff, so we'll know sooner than later. I am going to take Alabama as well. I'm still a little confused why this line is Georgia -3. I was told because they want more people to bet and try to swing it the other way and make more money on the house, but I don't know. I'm unless Stenson's going to come out there and do something special, or they figured out how to stop Bama's ground game, they're going to be in for a long night, man. They're going to be in for a long night. So I'm going to take Bama, even if they were favored. I would still take them. But the fact that they're sitting there +3, that's a win. I might even put some money on that tonight because, New York's got the sports book now. So we can bet legally here. I don't have to go to
bet mobile, right?
Yeah, hell yeah. Go on betting.net, make some money, do something special. But yeah, I guess that's it, man. Fastest show of the season that we'll have by far. A little bit of a shotgun show, but that's what happens when it's game time, baby.
Yep. Got a great matchup going on.
I'm excited. And I'm going to meet up with the boys. We're going to have some beers. We're going to have some wings. We're going to talk smack about each other's football teams, and it's going to be a blast. That's one of my favorite things about football is the wings and the banter with the boys. Just an excuse to get together and be degenerates. So I want to close out by reminding you guys that The Grueling Truth and this show are powered by Betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet for finding the online casino or sports book that is right for you. So head on over to Betting.net. And let's close this out. I want to thank you guys for tuning in on our little shotgun show here, a little quickie, if you will. Enjoy the national championship tonight. Sam, enjoy the game. And you are on Twitter, and I want to know what your handle is. Why don't you tell
Yeah, you
tell
can
the
follow
folks?
me. You can follow me on Twitter at Sam_Teats33. I also have a bit of a blog. You can just go to a website called Substack.com, search Sports Talk with Sam Teats. That's where you can find all my content right there, all my draft content, every bit of my NFL articles, everything will be there for you.
Beautiful. And when are you going to release your next mock draft or your next big board?
I don't know. I just started a new job today, so I'm a little bit like freaking out, trying to figure out everything, trying to get everything pinned down. But hopefully, I'm hoping by next weekend we'll have something out there, something serious for everyone to take a look at.
Perfect. And yeah, when we come back in next week's show, we'll go over everything that went on in this game, things that stood out to us, players that stood out to us, performances that stood out. And the next big thing is going to be the Senior Bowl. So that'll be the next big thing, next big topic of conversation that we'll be covering in depth. We'll talk about position groups. We'll rank our top guys for that game and everything. I love draft season. It's officially here.
Yes, it is.
And you guys can follow me. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. The handle is DB Talking Sports. D as in Dan, B as in Bob. That's DB Talking Sports. Give us a follow. Give us a like. I will follow you back. Send any DMs. I'll answer any questions. If you guys have any questions, concerns, show topics you want us to discuss, anything, don't hesitate. Reach out to one of us. We will reach out back, and we appreciate all the love and otherwise. So give us a follow on Twitter. Definitely visit Sam's site. He's got some good stuff on there. I love the rankings and the information. So show my man some love. Sam, enjoy the national championship, man. Have a good night. I'll talk to you next week.
Talk to you next week.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.